The first thing I found after my father died was not a will. It was a grocery receipt. 2 bottles of red wine, fresh bread, olives, flowers. Tuesday afternoon. My father had been in the hospital that week. I remember staring at the paper in his coat pocket and feeling something stupid and small catch in my throat. My mother hated olives. My father never bought flowers unless someone reminded him. For most of my life, we were painfully ordinary. My parents had been married 32 years. They fought about bills, forgot anniversaries, watched crime shows together, and fell asleep in separate armchairs. I thought that was what stability looked like. Not romance. Not fireworks. Just staying. There was also Daniel. He was the family friend. That was the phrase everyone used. He had known my father since college. He came to birthdays, fixed our kitchen sink once, carried boxes when I moved apartments. He was always around, so much that I stopped seeing him. At the funeral, Daniel stood beside my mother more than I did. I noticed it. Then I told myself grief makes people lean on whoever is closest. After the funeral, people disappeared quickly. For 2 weeks our house was full of casseroles, folded hands, quiet voices, and people saying my father had been a good man. Then suddenly it was just me and my mother sitting in a living room that felt abandoned. Daniel didn't disappear. He started dropping by almost every day. He brought groceries, handled paperwork, called the insurance company, drove my mother to appointments. At first I was grateful because I could barely think straight. My father had died so suddenly that I still expected to hear his keys at the door. But then I started noticing things I should have noticed years ago. He never knocked. He knew where the spare batteries were. He knew my mother's coffee order. He knew which cabinet held the aspirin. Once I asked where Dad kept the property papers, and Daniel answered before my mother did. I laughed about it at first. "Wow! You practically live here." He smiled, but not fully. "Your father needed help sometimes." My mother looked down at her hands. That tiny moment stayed with me longer than it should have. When I was younger, I thought Daniel was just one of those adults who somehow become permanent fixtures in your childhood. He was there after my school plays. He drove me to soccer practice when Dad worked late. When I broke my wrist at 14, he was the one who sat in the emergency room with my mother until my father arrived. That sounds terrible now, because back then it felt safe. Looking backward is dangerous. Suddenly every memory becomes evidence. I started remembering small things. The way my mother used to get tense if Daniel canceled dinner plans. The way my father sometimes went silent when Daniel's name came up. Once, years ago, I heard them arguing in the kitchen. "You're never here," my mother said. "I'm working," my father answered. "That's not what I mean." I walked in and they stopped talking. At the time, I thought it was marriage. Normal adult disappointment. Normal private pain. Now those memories began rearranging themselves into something uglier. And I hated myself for even thinking it. My father had just died. Who suspects their mother at a funeral? The first real crack happened because of my mother's phone. She had fallen asleep on the couch one evening. I was covering her with a blanket when her phone lit up. "Daniel." I wouldn't have looked if the preview hadn't shown the words "I miss you" already. I stood there so long the screen went black. I told myself it could mean anything. Grief makes people emotional. Maybe he meant he missed my father. Maybe I was becoming paranoid. Then I picked up the phone. There were dozens of messages. "Did you eat?" "Try to sleep. I hated leaving tonight." And then one from 3 nights before my father died. I can't keep pretending this doesn't break me. My whole body went cold. I felt guilty instantly, like I had committed some violation by reading further. But I did. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. My mother opened her eyes and saw me holding the phone. For 1 second she didn't look confused. She looked terrified. That was when suspicion stopped being suspicion. That was the moment something inside me shifted permanently. Why is he texting you like this? That was all I managed to say. My mother sat up too fast. She reached for the phone. I pulled it away like a child. It's not what you think, she said immediately. I actually laughed. A horrible sound. Sharp and ugly. That sentence only gets used when it is exactly what I think. She started crying. Not dramatic crying. Quiet, exhausted crying that somehow made me angrier. How long? I asked. She kept saying my name, over and over, like it would calm me down. How long? I said louder. Finally she whispered, Years. I honestly thought I had misheard her. What does years mean? A long time. I stood up so fast I hit the coffee table with my knee. You cheated on Dad? Her face folded. It wasn't like that. I can still hear myself. Then tell me what it was. And she said the sentence that still wakes me up some nights. I loved them both. For a second the room became unreal. Like the air had changed density. I couldn't breathe. I left the house and sat in my car for almost 2 hours. I didn't drive anywhere. I just sat there with both hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. I kept seeing my father in stupid ordinary moments. Reading the newspaper. Complaining about traffic. Falling asleep with reading glasses on. Had he known? Had he spent years living next to betrayal so deep it became furniture? The shame hit me almost as hard as the anger. I had trusted Daniel. I had hugged him at the funeral. I had thanked him. That thought made me physically sick. When I finally went back inside, my mother was at the kitchen table. Daniel was there too. That hurt more than I expected. He stood up immediately. I can explain, I said. No, you actually can't. He looked older than I had ever seen him. It wasn't supposed to happen. That made me explode. You were sleeping with your best friend's wife. Don't insult me with it happened. My mother started crying harder. And then Daniel said quietly, Your father knew. The whole room went silent. I felt something inside me drop straight through the floor. I thought he was lying. That was my first reaction. Pure refusal. My father did not know, I said. My mother looked at him with panic, and that terrified me more than his words. He knew, Daniel repeated. Not at first. Later. No. He found out 11 years ago. I couldn't even process the number. 11 years. My father had lived another 11 years after learning that his wife and best friend had betrayed him. Why didn't he leave? I asked. My mother covered her face. Daniel answered. Because of you. That made me furious in a different way. Don't you dare put that on me. But then my mother said. He wanted stability for you. He said he didn't want your life destroyed. I started crying then. Not graceful crying. The kind that feels like choking. My father had known. He had sat through birthdays and Christmases and graduations with that knowledge inside him. And I hadn't seen any of it. I felt like I had failed him without even understanding how. The next morning I went through my father's study. I don't know what I was looking for. Proof, maybe. Or permission to hate everyone. His desk was mostly boring paperwork, manuals, tax folders. Then I found an envelope with my name on it. Not dramatic. Just my first name, in his handwriting. Inside was a single page. It wasn't exactly a letter. More like unfinished thoughts. He wrote that life was rarely clean. That love could survive humiliation and still become something wounded but recognizable. He wrote that anger had kept him alive for a while, then exhausted him. And then the line that broke me. I stayed because I wanted at least one thing in your life to remain whole. I had to sit down on the floor. He never explicitly wrote Daniel's name. He didn't have to. Suddenly everything made terrible sense. His long walks at night. His silences. The way he looked tired in photographs even when he smiled. He carried this alone. And somehow I had never noticed the weight. I stopped answering my mother's calls for 3 weeks. She left voicemails every day. Sometimes crying. Sometimes calm. Sometimes sounding strangely practical, asking if I had eaten or if I remembered my dentist appointment. That almost made me hate her more. How could normal life keep moving? Daniel called once. I blocked him. My wife, Hannah, became the only person I talked to. She would sit beside me at night, while I said the same things over and over. I don't know what's real anymore. That was the truth. My childhood suddenly felt contaminated. Even good memories hurt. Every birthday photo made me wonder who knew what. Every family vacation became a puzzle. Hannah asked gently, "Do you think your father was unhappy all the time?" I didn't know. That scared me too. Because what if he still loved her? What if pain and love had lived together inside him for more than a decade? I started sleeping badly. My chest felt tight constantly. I snapped at coworkers. I forgot simple things. Grief had turned into something heavier than grief. Eventually I met my mother because not knowing was becoming its own kind of poison. We sat in a small cafe halfway across town. Neutral ground. She looked smaller. Older. Not fragile exactly. Just worn down. "I never meant for you to find out like that," she said. I almost laughed. Was there a better version? She accepted that. Then she told me the whole thing. It started during one of my father's long work periods. He traveled constantly. She was lonely. Daniel was around. It became emotional first, then physical. Then they tried to stop. Then failed. Then built a secret life around ordinary life. How long? I asked. Almost 15 years. 15. I felt dizzy. Did you love Dad? Yes. And Daniel? Her voice cracked. Yes. That answer made me angrier than if she had said no. Because it sounded human. Complicated. Real. And I didn't want real. I wanted someone to be clearly monstrous. Instead, there was just damage. I finally asked the question I had been avoiding. Did everyone know except me? My mother looked shocked. No. But there were others. My aunt knew. My father's sister had known for years. Apparently she found out after seeing them together once, and my father begged her not to tell me. That part almost destroyed me. My own family had been quietly arranged around a secret. I felt stupid. Humiliated. Like I had been the last person in a room to understand the joke. For a while I stopped going to family dinners. I couldn't stand the way people looked at me. Too careful, too soft, too guilty. Hannah told me I was isolating myself. She was right. But I couldn't help it. Trust became weirdly physical. If someone touched my shoulder unexpectedly, I'd tense up. If Hannah took too long answering a text, my mind went somewhere dark before logic caught up. I hated that. I hated that their choices had crawled into my marriage. That felt like the final theft. The worst conversation happened 2 months later. Daniel came to my apartment without warning. I almost shut the door in his face. He said, "Please." 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He stood in my kitchen, the same man who taught me how to change a tire when I was 17, and suddenly I didn't know who he was. "I loved your father," he said. That sentence made me furious. You don't get to say that. It's true. Friends don't do this. He looked shattered. I know. Then he told me something I didn't expect. My father had punched him once. Years ago. Not a dramatic fight. One punch in the garage. Then they sat there for an hour. What did he say? I asked. Daniel swallowed hard. He said, "If you break what's left of my family, I'll never forgive you." I cried after he left. Not for Daniel. For my father. For the loneliness hidden inside that sentence. My mother and Daniel are not together now. That surprised me at first. Apparently, after my father died, they tried to become something real and couldn't survive the weight of what they had done. My mother told me once, "We only knew how to exist in shadows." That stuck with me. She lives alone now. I see her sometimes. Birthdays, holidays, careful lunches that never feel natural. We don't talk about my father much because every memory has sharp edges. Sometimes she starts crying unexpectedly. Sometimes I do. People assume grief softens with time. Mine changed shape instead. I don't wake up angry every day anymore. Now it comes in strange moments. Passing a hardware store because my father loved wandering those aisles. Seeing an older couple argue over groceries. Finding one of his old sweaters in the back of a closet. That's when it hits. Not just that he died. That he carried heartbreak quietly while teaching me what loyalty looked like. My marriage survived, but not untouched. For almost a year, Hannah became the accidental target of fears she didn't create. I checked tones in her voice. I noticed pauses in conversations. I became suspicious of harmless things and hated myself immediately afterward. One night she finally said, "I love you, but I can't spend my life paying for what they did." She was right. That sentence scared me enough to get help. Therapy felt humiliating at first, then necessary. I learned that betrayal doesn't stay contained. It spreads. It rewrites old memories. It teaches your body danger before your mind understands why. The hardest part was admitting I missed my mother while still being angry at her. People like simple categories: victim, villain, innocent, guilty. Families are rarely that clean. My father was hurt. My mother was selfish and human. Daniel was cowardly and loyal in ways that make no sense to me. And I was left holding pieces that don't fit together. That's still where I am. It's been 3 years now. Sometimes I visit my father's grave alone. I talk more now than I did when he was alive, which feels unfair. I tell him I'm sorry I didn't know. Sorry I didn't ask harder questions. Sorry I mistook silence for peace. I know rationally none of this was mine to prevent. But grief isn't rational. The thing I still can't fully process is that love and betrayal lived in the same house for years, and I called it normal. That realization changed me more than the affair itself. Now when people say, "You never really know what happens inside a marriage," I understand that in my bones. I still love my mother. That may be the most confusing truth of all. But love doesn't erase what happened. It just makes the loss harder to name. If there's any lesson here, it's probably this. Secrets don't disappear because children are protected from them. They wait. And when they finally surface, they don't just explain the past. They rearrange it.